good day, everyone, and welcome back to the Dr. Coach Show. I'm your host, Dr. Coach Danny Pueblos, and today I have my good friend from the East Coast, mental health and performance coach at the University of Massachusetts Amherst, my friend Zack Etter. How you doing today, Zack?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, man. Like we've talked about in the past, I love bringing people on here who can provide, some sort of value to my listeners, and especially because I know people, who listen to this who are getting ready to work in the field potentially, or interested in working in the field of either mental health, and or performance psychology, and because you bring this very unique approach to in which you have your feet in both realms, right? That's why, and you're just an awesome person, right? So that's, I wanted to kind of bring you on and share you to the world, you to all, the listeners out there who are listening to this, so that you can definitely, give them your experience, right? And just your input on everything. So again, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Appreciate that. Yeah, I think I appreciate UMass as well for creating this type of position. I think athletic departments around the country at all levels are starting to create funding and provide resources to take care of their athletes' mental health, but also to improve their mental performance. And you introduced me as a mental health and performance coach, and that's exactly what I am. I'm a certified mental performance consultant through the Association of Applied Sports Psychology, but I'm also a licensed mental health clinician. And I can work with athletes on mental health issues that are impacting them off the field, and mental skills like confidence and emotional regulation and resilience, performing under pressure, the actual skill set that they can perform mentally to reach their potential as an athlete.
Yeah, I love it. And there's definitely a need for both, right? Where you might have people who are, strictly on the clinical side, and people who are strictly on the mental performance side. And so that's awesome that you're able to kind of provide both services, to the people there at UMass. And which brings a lot more value to, to you and what you do. So definitely appreciate that. And also, that's what I wanted to bring you on to talk about your experiences as far as leading up to where you are today with UMass and doing what you're doing with your own, business, and which we'll definitely, get into in a little bit. But kind of take us back to how, at what point you knew you wanted to get into this field. And I know that you've been in sports for a long time, and going from an athlete being a coach, right? So take us back to how it all started, and leading us up to today.
So just all the way back. I mean, multi-sport athlete growing up. I played high school football, baseball, and volleyball. Originally, when I went to school, it was not for psychology. It was not for coaching or sports. But when I was in high school, my brother was actually at Tulane Law School, and my intention was to get my law degree. And growing up, we always talked about, we were inspired by Drew Rosenhaus and the book A Shark Never Sleeps that he wrote. And, we wanted to be sports agents and open up our own agency. And when I went to Penn State for my freshman year, I took a criminology class, the psychology of criminal behavior. And I just was so fascinated by it that I continued taking psychology courses. I ended up transferring to UConn and coaching high school football at a private school in Connecticut called St. Paul Catholic High School. And I was coaching high school football while getting my psychology degree. And then I got the opportunity my senior year at UConn to be a student assistant coach at the University of Connecticut for their football team while I finished my degree in psychology. And everything kind of just went haywire with the season, and the head coach and the offensive coordinator were fired midway through the season. Everybody had to kind of step up. So I'm out coaching receivers on a day-to-day basis at, I think I was 20 years old or so, while I was a student assistant. And I got the opportunity to coach football at Fordham University, the University of Delaware, over the next couple seasons. But I went back to school in 2016 to Springfield College, and I got my degree in a faction of sports psychology that we call athletic counseling, which is really one-on-one counseling that's specifically for athletes and the issues and the struggles that athletes go through that maybe the general population doesn't go through. So, I think to blend the psychology degree with the coaching experience and my love for athletics and my, history of being an athlete, I think being a mental performance coach and a mental health clinician for athletes was just really good in terms of my experience and my skill set and what I'm interested in. And, lately, and we talked about this, in the past couple of weeks and before we came on, my focus has really been working with coaches as well. When I'm at UMass, I work with the athletes here, but my experience as a coach and, the importance, I think, in coaches understanding mental health, mental performance, and sports psychology for their athletes. That's been a personal plight of mine, and trying to work with as many coaching staffs as possible around the country at all levels of sport for how to start incorporating sports psychology and mental health into their practices, their routines, the way that they provide feedback, the way they make decisions, and their programs as a whole.
Yeah, and that's great. And I'm definitely seeing, more and more coaches kind of being on board with that. Now, so I know you have a program, right? You have a program that you've established, that you're putting out there to people, and you've presented, which is great. It provides a great value. So can you talk to me more about that program for coaches?
Absolutely. So I have a coach's education course. It's an online course that you kind of go through it yourself, and there's markers and modules that you get through, but it starts with just sports psychology 101. What is sports psychology? What is mental performance? How does it fit into the overall scope of your athlete's performance in general? And, what are we talking about, right? And then as it goes through, it introduces mental skills that I help athletes get better at, like, helping them with their mindset, motivation, confidence, resilience, performing under pressure. But I'm not just teaching the coaches those mental skills. I'm telling them and teaching them how they can incorporate those skills into their program so that they can have an actionable plan when they're done with the course. What's my role in my player's motivation? What's my role in my player's mindset? How do I help my player perform well under pressure so that it takes the guessing game out of it, and we're not just crossing our fingers with the game on the line and hoping that our players perform well? We could actually do something as coaches about it to ensure that our team's mental performance has just as much of a chance to win us a game as their physical performance, their tactical advantage that we create for them, and their technical ability that we work on the field every day.
Yeah, definitely, great facets that have not really been addressed,
Right.
for the longest time. I mean, I remember when I was playing football, no one talked about that stuff.
I mean,
Even I remember like telling, family, even my dad, about sports psychology, and he was a lifelong athlete, and played football, and he was like, "What the heck is that?" Like, we never, we just went out there and played. You toughed it up, and so, and it's funny now, he's like, "Oh, this stuff is awesome. I'm hearing more and more, these athletes talking about it more." So, like, he's finally realizing the importance of it. And a lot of stuff is not rocket science, right? I mean, a lot of this stuff is like we're aware of that we just never addressed before. And like with
important
you,
thing too is when I speak to the coaches, we're not reinventing anything. We're not doing anything different. It's how to incorporate this into what we already do.
yeah,
And some of the resistance from some of the old school coaches of having that empathy and taking a step back and allowing their players to feel what they're feeling and kind of manage those emotions and their experiences going on in 2022 with COVID and all of the challenges that young athletes and teenagers and even college athletes face right now. What I say is, like, it's the way that you coached a kid in 1990 or 2000. You could do that, but it's just not going to work, as well as it used to. So, if I'm a coach and I want to win a championship and I want my team to perform well consistently in 2022, 2023 and beyond, if you think that you can have a championship program that doesn't address mental health and doesn't work on mental skills to perform well at their best with the game on the line, you're just being negligent, and it's not looking out for your players' best interests.
yeah, yeah, and that's it's such an important point, because there are so many people, and this could be with any industry, but especially in sports, especially with coaches, how some people, they choose to be stagnated. They choose to not want to grow, not want to develop, and they go with the whole, if it ain't broke, why fix it? Like, in their minds, if it ain't broke, it's not broken. I've been doing this for years, right? So, um, with your experience, because I know I've had my experience, and I'll share that in a second. About, I'm just curious about, what has been your experience as far as getting like the buy-in from coaches. Like, what has been their response, and like, what are some challenges that you've had with kind of presenting this kind of stuff to coaches?
So you use the term kind of like common sense, right? And this is common sense that this needs to be worked on and addressed. So I try to present it in a non-offensive way in that tone, right? So if you have a 6'4" receiver who weighs 230 pounds and runs a 4.4 and can jump through the roof, but loses all his confidence with the game on the line, right? Or isn't able to focus or pay attention when there's distractions and doesn't have the right mindset to be coached and get better, you got nothing. And the way that I equate it to is similar to physical health and working in the weight room and strength and conditioning, right? Where we're doing work to strengthen, these muscles or to strengthen our mind that is going to help us competitively. And I break it down that performance is 4 categories. There's the physical side, the size, strength, and speed. We're all comfortable with that. We all talk about that all the time. Okay. And you hire a strength and conditioning staff. You have a strength and conditioning program, you have a weight room, and you do all off season with that, right? Then there's number 2, the tactical side. That's really the coach's job, right? Like the X's and O's, coming up with the strategies for how to attack our opponents. Coaches go to clinics in the off season. They have meetings all year. They have game planning meetings. They have game plans for those specific games. And we try to create a competitive advantage by having a better scheme than our opponents. The third is the technical side, the actual skill set that the player needs to play their position. We spend camps and practices all day in those individual drills, the team drills, the indie drills, whatever it is that we're doing to improve our skills of playing. And then the last is the mental, all of the mental skills that allows them to perform at their best when there's some adversity. And if you're not focusing at all on the mental side of performance, which maybe we can agree is at least 25%, right? Even if we're just breaking it up into those 4, why are we willfully neglecting such a significant aspect of performance? And then, just using that common sense phrase, in 2022 and beyond, the mental side of the game is, of course, a challenge for players. It's, of course, something that they struggle with as mental health issues rise, right? And the pressure and the scrutiny that comes from social media and the comparisons that these kids are making to each other, and the NIL deals that are on the table when they're 14 years old. I mean, we have a significant concern about the mental health and performance of our athletes. So the way that I present it to coaches is exactly that. If you're not incorporating this into what you're doing, it's a competitive disadvantage. And there's no way that you're going to have a consistent championship team that doesn't focus on mental health and performance moving forward.
Yeah, all great points, all and great approach, man. Because I know I've dealt with my share of skeptics, and especially like the coaches or like parents of younger athletes who are just like, I never use that stuff, or how could they benefit from this? But yeah, it's kind of breaking that down and kind of speaking their own language, right? As far as showing them how this stuff can absolutely help. And also like making sure they realize, because I know in the past, I've had coaches who thought I was trying to like step on their toes, as far as, especially because I know the game, right? Like that's the whole other thing. If you know the game, you might have some coaches who might feel a little insecure and think, oh, who's this guy coming in here, and trying to change what I'm trying to do. And I make that very clear in the beginning. I'm not doing that. My job is to enhance what you're already doing here, to teach, to show everyone the importance of what this stuff can do, how it could take everything that you're doing here and what you're building to the next level, and do everything what you just mentioned, and that's what's tough, right? Because you have some coaches who are like, hey, some coaches, athletes who are like, they're on board with it. Some are just like, I'm open to it, right? Like, let me hear what you have to say. And some are just like, nope, I don't want to hear it, right? And like and so that's something to consider. That's something to think about, especially for those early practitioners who are getting ready to work in the field. Like that's a challenge that they're gonna face at some point, right? And you have to be ready for that, right?
Yeah, the resistance is going to be there. I mean, this is still a stigmatized field. Mental health in general still has the stigma attached, and athletes and coaches may have the most severe, negative thoughts about seeking help. And we actually know from studies statistically that athletes at the college and pro level are, number one, more likely to experience diagnosable mental health symptoms than the general public, and number 2, are less likely to seek help for it. So we have a problem, right? We're more likely to be struggling, and we're less likely to seek help. But in terms of the resistance from the coaches, again, there's multiple different layers to this. If you're a football coach and you want your athletes to run inside zone well, then you have to practice inside zone. If Frank Martin, our basketball coach, if he wants his athletes to run a 2-3 zone, they have to practice it. And if they don't practice it, he can't expect them to play well in a 2-3 zone. Simple, right? So I ask coaches, do you want your athlete to have confidence with the game on the line? Do you want your athlete to be able to move forward quickly after a mistake? Do you want your athlete to be able to handle adversity? Do you want them to be coachable and have a great mindset? Okay, well, if we don't practice it, you can't expect them to do it. Everything that we ask our athletes to do, we have to be able to clearly define it, show them what it looks like when they have success doing it, and be able to practice it. And if you can't define it, if you can't show them what it looks like when they're successful and you can't practice it, then you can't ask them to do it. So if you want your athletes to be confident and have a great mindset and be resilient, but you're not practicing it and you're not showing them what it looks like to be successful at those things, they're not going to be. And then you have a problem. How are you going to win a championship if you're not working on those things? You know?
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me of like how there are some coaches out there who don't focus on the details, and they coach, what their voice is in their minds, right? And I remember having a coach like this. Like one of my coaches, like when I was younger, he was just like, because I played, I was a lineman, offense and defensive line, and even I've seen coaches do this too, where they'll get on the athlete and say, just block, just block. Well, okay, what does that mean, right? Like what a part of their blocking scheme do they need to work on? Like, especially kids, especially when we're dealing with the younger ones, like, talk to them and walk them through the fundamentals of what what blocking means. Are we run blocking, pass blocking? What kind of scheme is it, right? Like, what kind of offense are we running? All these things, right? And like, is it zone, like you said, zone blocking, all these things. But it's very similar to how it's like having a coach, instead of just saying, oh, just block or just do that. Like, how come, be more confident, be more this. Okay, but how, right? And that's where, the coaches, and that's where, people like ourselves, like, come in to help take that next step, right? Take the next step to show, and especially dealing with this, this generation of athletes, they want to know why. Why are these doing these drills? Why are we spending time on this, right? And I know, like, for me, when I was coaching, I would always do that for every drill, every little thing that we would work on. I would tell my athletes why we're doing this. Why are we spending time on this, right? Because time is very limited. Time is precious, especially when you go to the higher levels like college, especially at the NFL or, the professional levels. It's like there's so much, like, time is becoming even more, scarce, because of the different, intricacies with the player agreements, all that stuff. And so anything that you're practicing, anything the coaches are spending time on, it's for a reason. And so you want to, like, maximize that time, right? And so you have to be able to, like, learn and not be stagnated, and to, like, adjust and be open to, like, I know as a coach, I was always open to wanting to learn and see if I could better myself as a coach, if I could help my athletes and take that to the next level. Like, I'm open to it, right?
Yep.
So, it's just one of those things that that a lot of us people, a lot of us in the field are going to have to prepare for and help and do a good job of explaining it, right?
Yep.
And that includes, like, having an elevator pitch, because so some people, they're not, linked up with a university or a team. Sometimes they go on their own, and they're going to have these, opportunities to speak to coaches, to speak with parents of young athletes, and to tell them about what it is that they do. And if you're not ready, they're going to blow you off. They're going to be like, okay, well, this person doesn't even know what they're talking about, what they're trying to sell me, right? Especially because, like you said, there's still a stigma around mental health. There's still this uncertainty about what the heck is a sports psychology stuff, right? And that's why I think the way we communicate is key. And so, like, even with you and myself, being that we both have experience, coaching, how do you feel that, either because, you've been an athlete and as a coach, how do you feel that's helped you, as far as, like, serving as a foundation for the person and the practitioner you are today?
Well, I think in terms of the communication that you say is really important. I get it. I know what coaches go through. I know what the day-to-day life is of a college football coach. I know their concerns, right? And some of their concerns is, I don't want an outside influence impacting how my players think and what they do without me really understanding it. So I totally get the concern and the hesitation. That's not even to mention the stigma involved with mental health and mental performance anyway. But I think my experience as a player and a coach allows me to sit across from a defensive tackle. And when he says I'm having issues with attention and focus, I can ask him, are you lining up in a one tech when you're supposed to be in a three tech? Right? Like, are we setting our feet? Are we attacking the inside hip of a back? Or, I can ask them football specific questions. I could ask baseball players baseball specific questions. And I think to be able to speak their language takes down their guard, so they don't feel like they're in a doctor's office being asked, about medical issues. We're combining mental health and mental performance as just another way to get better. Right. So just like they're going to the weight room to get stronger, we're coming to see a sports psychologist to get stronger mentally. And again, if you go to the weight room, is every single person at the weight room weak and that's why they're there? No, there's people who are strong. There's people who are injured. There's people who are weak. There's people who are there because they're trying to, have something healthy that they're building into their routine, right? So you can go to the gym when you're weak to get stronger. You can go to the gym when you're strong to stay strong. You can go to the gym when you're injured to regain that strength. And it's the same way with going to a sports psychologist, and it's the same way with going to therapy, right? There's a million reasons to see a sports psychologist to go to therapy. It's not just for people in crisis, and it's not just for people who are struggling. It's to gain and develop and to perfect skills that are going to help us perform better. And why would you, if you say that you want to play at the next level, if you say that you want to win a championship, if you say you want to make a career out of this, why would you not take advantage of an opportunity to get better?
Yeah, and that's again, speaking their language was a key component, and that's a part of it. Showing them, because most athletes, especially at the higher levels, they want to do anything and everything to do better, to gain that edge, to prepare themselves or put themselves in a good position to potentially play at the next level, wherever the next level is, whether it's from high school to college to pro, or amateur to pro, and one part of that is communicating that. And I think when people have like the background of being an athlete and being a coach, I think that definitely helps, because I know it's helped me in relating to my athletes. Not saying that someone who wasn't an athlete or coach can't, right? But I know for me, it's definitely helped me relate to them. And and there's so many times, and I'm sure you've experienced the same, where I've worked with athletes or coaches, and they've gone through something very similar to what I have. I mean, it happens all the time, and they're talking to me. I'm thinking about, I'm like, yep, I've been through that. Yep, I've been through that too. And I think that definitely, because there's a lot of people that when they come into these sessions, right, like, yeah, they have this wall up, right? They have this wall up and trying to figure out if they can trust us, and I think, and that's why I've always found it a priority to create, and build a foundation of rapport, and show these athletes and whoever I'm working with in mental performance, like, hey, we're just talking here, like, and that's why I even have like my athletes call me coach. Like, listen, I tell them, don't think of this as like, because that's what they're thinking. A lot of them are coming in thinking that they're going to lay on this couch and, I'm going to be like Freud and just like, psychoanalyzing them, all this stuff. And I'm just like, no, like, hey, we're just talking. And that's why, I especially love being out of the office, out, being on the field, being on the court, right? Like bringing them to their setting, bringing them to their environment, because that's where they find comfort, right? So I don't know, like, how your experience has been with that, like, looking at the comparisons between, the different environments of like working with these athletes, and even like, talking about the day to day, because, you're working at the collegiate level now, but like talking about how, that has encompassed itself into the day to day that you see today.
Yeah, I'll kind of address the point you made and then answer your question. I think when it comes to building rapport and, breaking down those walls, the way that I do is the whole foundation of Holistic Athlete, my mental performance consulting company. I got the flag up there. The whole approach there is, again, holistic, right? So these mental skills that we're talking about that will help them perform at their best are skills that are transferable to other areas of their lives. So when we sit down, I ask them, how's your academic life? How's your social life? How's your personal life? How's your family life? And yes, how's athletics going? But all of those conversations blend together, because if we're talking about confidence, we could build confidence in one arena in life and have it transfer over to another, right? So we could build confidence in our ability to get a great grade on a test in a class that we struggle with, and that can transfer over into having more confidence into learning the playbook, right? Because we successfully accomplished something that we were originally struggling with. So to make those connections and to check in with them on those different parts of their life, and then to follow up with them on how those other parts of their life are going. And then, yes, like you said, to show up to practices, show up to games, and show them that you're following up and caring about the things that you work on in session. So when I took this job, I said, they wanted me to really focus and put a lot of to prioritize the mental health sessions, right? Like the one-on-one sessions. And I said to them, to have a holistic opportunity for the athletes to really get the most of this, we need to do player development. We need to do workshops. We need to do one-on-one sessions. We need to do coaches education. And I need to be at practices and games for me to build that rapport to actually make a significant impact with those athletes. Because if I'm not showing up and they don't see me at those practices and games, they might not know it consciously, but they're not going to trust me as implicitly. And then we're not going to get as much done. Right. So to me, setting aside time each day to go to at least a couple practices or to go to games or to, hey, if I'm working with an athlete on emotional regulation because she's struggling making her free throws, I'm going to go to her next game and watch her shoot free throws so that good or bad, we can process it. And she knows that I cared enough to go watch. So I think attending practices and games in person is something that I very purposely build into my daily schedule. Typically what it looks like at UMass is I'll do individual sessions with the athletes during the day, in the morning, late morning, early afternoon, and then go to practices mid-afternoon and go to games at night.
Yeah, and I think that's such a key component to it, because and I know there's people listening to this who are getting ready to work in the field, and they're probably thinking like, am I going to be in the office the entire time? Am I going to be in the field, right? And that varies, right? That varies depending on if someone has their own consulting practice or business, if they are exclusively with a team or a university or athletics program, but yeah, I mean, I know I found it beneficial to again being in their environment, and it allows us to see them in their natural environment, right? To see, and that's the thing too, is like having like an eye for these different performances and seeing not only it's one thing, as and sometimes I have to turn my, and I don't really turn it off, but like kind of incorporating the coach's eye, as I call it, where it's like seeing the fundamental stuff, but also I look at the details. And this is also something that like I would do too, like when I was coaching, when I was assistant coach for a college basketball team over here, when I would go recruit, I would remember, I would look at these potential candidates for the team, and I will look at the details. And that's why I would tell them, or their families, like, yeah, I look at the details, I look at the intangibles. And it's a lot of those intangibles that we work on, a lot of those intangibles that separate the elite athletes from the non-elite athletes, the ones who are significantly just athletically gifted, and but they don't have the stuff up right upstairs, and those who are gifted and have the stuff, at least like, have get better control versus the average athlete. And just watching them, how they respond to adverse situations, like watch them, if they miss a wide open layup, or in football, if they, if the quarterback throws an interception, running back fumbles the ball, lineman misses the block, field goal kicker misses the kick. Like, name the sport, name the adverse situation. Like, I want to see how they respond in those situations.
Yeah,
I want to see, like, do they go and pout and just throw themselves at the end of the bench? Do they go, turn on their teammates and start, going off of them? Do they even, and I've seen this, going off on their own coach, right? Or going off on the rest, like, because those are indications, right? And I get it, people might have a bad day here and there. That happens, right? But when you're seeing this stuff become a pattern, right, that's when we're able to say, okay, like, there's something going on there. Or even it's one time, because that one time can definitely turn into a snowball effect. And next thing you know, and that's where, one bad game can turn to multiple bad games, right? But it's those small details that athletes, coaches, mental performance coaches, you name it, anyone working in this field have to address, because it's, especially at the elite levels, like where you can't get away with just being athletic. I mean, that talent gap, from in like youth and high school is like here, and then once you go to college and pro, it's like right here, and so it's those small little details that matter, right?
But that's where we come in, right? Like if the competition is so stark and there's not much of a difference that separates the talent level and the physical abilities, then the mental side of it is where we can gain our competitive advantage. And that's the way I present it too. We gain competitive advantages by doing a better job at something that our opponent is also doing. So if it's raining, whoever handles the rain better is going to have a competitive advantage, right? If the crowd in the environment is crazy, whoever handles the crazy crowd and environment is going to have a competitive advantage. So are we going to make a mistake during this game? Of course. Is our opponent going to make a mistake during this game? Of course. So that is an adverse situation that we are both going to deal with. And we can create a competitive advantage by being the team or being the athlete that handles that adverse situation better than our opponent. So we're always looking for ways that we can find competitive advantages and win games when maybe we shouldn't, and it's an opportunity to do that. But I think too, in terms of going to practices, it gives you an opportunity to have real life examples in your session. So if we're working on moving forward after a mistake, and we're working on resilience, and I go to practice and I see them miss a shot and I see them not respond well, right? Rather than having a hypothetical conversation about resilience, I can call them out for it and say, hey, at practice yesterday, at this point in practice, you missed your shot. Talk me through what your thought process was there, because I'll tell you what I saw, right? And you could actually build, rapport better by saying, I saw you, I saw this, like, tell me what you're thinking. And, those real life examples, they can learn better through them, because it's something that they can remember. And it's something that was their own personal experience. If you're up on a whiteboard, drawing up hypothetical situations, I mean, they're going to learn that about as well as they learn in class, but that applied learning of being out in the field and, even there's some teams that I work with that I can actually be out on the field and just go talk right to them, after they make a mistake. It kind of depends on my relationship with the coach and what they want this to look like. But, going to practices is completely necessary, not just from a rapport standpoint, but I think it's just part of our job. I think we just have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a beauty in my opinion. Like just being able to because I love sports. I mean, I wouldn't be. I'm sure you do too. Like I wouldn't be in this field if I didn't. I think that allows us, to kind of still have ourselves immersed in this field and being around, you know, people that like are like us. That's why even like going to those like conferences, right? Like how ASP, puts on the annual conference, and being able to be around yourself and our colleagues in the field and people with different levels of experiences, right? It was awesome to be around like-minded people. And so and that was a testament, right? That was a testament to how much the field is growing. And because we're being put on more and more people's radars as
Yes.
far as the importance of what we do, and how we're not just some quick little magic trick that people tended to put us in this category before, as far as, oh, this is just some stuff that we don't need, right? Some gimmick, right?
I'll tell you, I mean, one of the things that stood out to me about that conference is the progress that we've made on a field since the last time we had a conference. So, for those of you who don't know, like he said, they put on a conference once a year. The last time that we had a conference was pre-COVID, right? It was 2018. So, or maybe it was early 2019, whatever it was. It's been a few years since we had a conference. And now we're asking, difficult questions like you and I were in a session talking about a return to play protocol when it comes to an athlete who left their sport due to a mental health issue. We're talking about the rising rates of suicidality in athletes. We're talking about the difficult challenges that LGBT athletes face. We're asking ourselves more pertinent, more important questions as we see athletes struggle with mental health, and we have more funding and resources that we can utilize in the field and in the space of mental health for athletes. So that conference was a good sign for me that we're asking the right questions. there's not always an easy answer. There's not always a solution at all, but to have those conversations and have people in the field start to brainstorm ways that different universities and different colleges or high schools or wherever you work can start taking care of the mental health of their athletes in a real way. I'm excited about where the field is going moving forward.
Absolutely. And like, and I just thought about just, even my experience working with working with NFL players and the Pro Football Hall of Fame, how they put together this program and this kind of, sector of mental health and helping provide these mental health resources to current and retired NFL players and their families. And I tell people, listen, if that doesn't show you the progress we're making just across the board, as far as mental health, mental performance, I don't know what would. Like, we're talking about these big macho NFL players talking about their stuff, talking about their issues, and yes, they are very much human, right? Because people tend to believe, oh, they have all this money, what kind of problems will they have? I'm here to tell you, I'm sorry, you will
You
too.
want to
Like,
start? Yeah.
yeah. More money, more problems, right? But and so that's a sign right there too, of how much, and that's why I appreciate people who have platforms and they utilize them, to help spread the awareness of mental health. And especially in athletes, because of how much athletes are glorified and how many people look up to athletes. Or just celebrities in general, people who have, again, these platforms, but, there's so many people that look up to them, and it's a trickle down effect, right? I mean, and we're seeing this not only with like mental health, mental performance, but just in general of how things that the NFL does, for example, college football tends to follow suit, and then the high school and the youth levels tend to follow suit from that, right? That's usually how things work. And so, my hope, and we're seeing indications of this, as far as, when it comes to mental health, having mental health resources, programs, and mental performance coaching, hopefully that trickles down, to these younger groups, because it's definitely needed. Like, that's where this foundation is being set, right? Because yeah, you're seeing more and more professional leagues and teams, not only bringing us in and doing the consulting work, but I mean, look, you're hired full-time staff, right? You're seeing more and more of that, and that's another indication of how, so much of what we do, as far as the clinical side and the performance psychology side is being utilized. And I know we'll get to this point, but hopefully down the line, it's going to be the norm to have a full-time mental health practitioner, mental performance coach at every level.
It will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and and that was the beauty about, and that kind of reinvigorated, when we went to that APS, the Association for Applied Sports Psychology. For those who don't know, they hold an annual conference, and every year is different. And yeah, we've been virtual for the past couple of years because of COVID, and but that definitely reinvigorated, a little spark in myself, seeing so many people there, especially, the younger generation, the ones who are still in college, going to grad school or fresh out of grad school. And you could just tell, like, they're like hyped up, they're excited to go. Right. And I'm like, this is awesome. Cause like that, to me, that tells me, hey, this field is going to be, continue to boom, and it's going to be in good hands,
I actually went to the conference with a friend of mine who's in the Springfield College graduate athletic counseling program that I graduated from. And it was cool for him to just meet people in the field like us. I mean, it's if you like sports and you like coaching, or you like playing sports and you're interested in psychology or understand the benefit of it, it's cool to be around people who, work with athletes and work with teams at all different levels. I mean, there's people with ASP that work with the Olympics. There's people who work with first responders. There's people that work with the military. And I think the important thing that I am reminded of when I go to that conference is that we're really talking about performance psychology, not necessarily sports psychology, right? Like, anyone who has to perform, a surgeon doing surgery, a firefighter running into a burning building to do their job, they have to be able to control their emotions, right? To have their mental and physical body work as one, right? They need confidence. They need resilience when things don't go their way. So all of this can be applied to anything. And I think that's something that he and I talked about afterwards, with how far can we reach this? Like, what are all the applicable ways that we can apply performance psychology? And there really is no end to it.
Yeah. I completely agree. I completely agree. And um, I remember having, someone taught and asked me the same thing. They're kind of picking my brain, and um, they were like, "Well, I know it seems like this thing is, this field is so geared towards sports." I was like, "Well, it kind of that's where it kind of started, right? It kind of started in the sports sector, and but now we're realizing that as far as like what we do, as far as on the performance psychology side, yeah, it basically comes down to AV performance based, which is most anything, if you think about it, right? Um, and so that's the beauty of it, right? And that's why, like, when I mentor people, when I have these mentees, and I have some of them who want to be in sports, some who want to be, work with the military, and I even have a couple who want to work with like in the entertainment industry, because I've told them about my history working with entertainers too, and it just making a couple of tweaks, like if you're, like if we have a background in sports, right,
Mhm.
if we get called upon to work with an entertainer, like, a musician, or actor or whatever, it just making a couple of tweaks, but it just comes down to that performance, and there's so many just commonalities across the board when it comes to that, right? So I think that's definitely, it's going to become more and more apparent, and that's why I've told especially the younger, practitioners, like, yeah, even though you don't see us as far as mental coaches working in this industry, doesn't mean that you can't. You can be one of the one of the first to create a presence of, mental coaches, mental performance coaches, working with ballet dancers, like one of my mentees and actually wants to do, and and don't shy away from that just because there's no precedent there, right? And so
The
that's,
friend
yeah.
that I mentioned wants to be a mental performance coach at Juilliard, and work with actors, musicians, and singers.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, definitely a lot to grow. And so, like, if and I'm sure you get this, these a lot of people asking you, but if you had someone who, or if and when you do, have people asking you about advice,
Yeah.
especially these early practitioners who are, or who are still in school, or maybe they're just fresh out of college, and they're, they want to get their feet wet. Like, what is some advice that you would give them, to get going?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends what you want to do, right? If you want a job in the field and you want a salary and you want to work with athletes, I think that the number one thing that we're in the relationship business, right? Like that's first and foremost.
Mhm.
So practicing the skills of counseling and relationship building that help build rapport, that help develop trust, and being able to communicate effectively, but understanding that everyone's going to have their own issues that they bring to the table. Every athlete that you work with grew up in the house that they grew up in, with the parents that they grew up in the house, in the town, in the school, and they have all their own life experiences. So we're not there to understand them better than they understand themselves. They are the expert on themselves, right? We're not there to solve their problems. What we're here to do is to find the thought processes, find the beliefs that are preventing them from being at their best, and pointing it out, right? And giving them different tools and giving them different ways to look at things in a way that is safe, in a way that's confidential, in a way that does not break their trust. So I think, in general, when we're talking about working in this field, we're talking about building meaningful relationships. And, as much research as you could do, as much practice as you can get. If you're going to pick a grad program, pick a grad program that allows you to work directly with athletes, because you can't get this experience without doing it, right? You have to have the experience of the one-on-one time in the room with those athletes and practice those counseling skills. But then in general, if we're talking about individually how to be successful, individually how to make a lot of money or make a big name for yourself, in this day and age, you have to meet people where they're at, and where they're at is social media. And I do not like that, right? Like I'm not a very big social media person. Most of my posts on social media are asking people to get off of social media, right? I think it's in many ways responsible for a lot of the challenges from a mental health standpoint that we face, especially younger people these days. But the reality is, just like any other business or marketing agent would tell you, you have to meet people where they're at. So where people are at right now is TikTok. Right. So I've kind of built this TikTok page over the course of the past year and a half or so. I don't have a crazy amount of followers. I probably have like 13,000 or something like that. But I started making videos because I was really frustrated with all of the crazy bad misinformation that was going on about mental health. Like if you go on Twitter or Instagram, you see an account with 200,000 followers that's just tweeting complete nonsense about mental health. And I feel like that's dangerous. Right. So we're at a time in the mental health world where people want to know more information and people are looking things up and people are Googling mental health disorders. So to have that kind of level of misinformation out there was concerning for me. So I would just make videos saying like, here's this post, here's why it's wrong, here's what's right, and just try to correct that. But it's turned into a little bit more where I'm identifying issues that athletes might be struggling with. I'm providing solutions. I'm coming up with ways that, they can change the way that they think or change the way that their mindset can be applied to a certain situation. And I think it's resonated with people. I have a friend who has a golf parody account with almost 400,000 followers, and they get apparel deals and sponsorship deals. And that's the way that they monetize that account. For me, it's not necessarily about doing that. It's about reaching as many people as possible. So maybe the athletic director of X school sees a video and reaches out to me. Maybe a CEO of a corporation might find it helpful or interesting to work with their human resources on mental health and performance. So for me, it's kind of about reaching people, getting people helpful information, but also building my brand and notoriety so that when people look up Zack Etter, you could go to Zack Etter 16 and you could see me on TikTok and Instagram and Twitter. And as much as I don't like being on social media for mine and other people's mental health, if you want to run a business these days and you don't have a social media presence, you're leaving money on the table for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. All great points of advice. And again, that goes into not being stagnated, right? Keeping up, adjusting with the times. Especially because I know, like, I have like, one of my mentees. He's like, I do not want to be on social media. I don't have any social media, and I told him the same thing like you just said. And I'm like, listen, that's your choice, but here are the potential consequences if you don't. Yeah, and because there's a lot of people, whether potential clients or just colleagues in the field, and just the ability to network, is potentially also there too, right? And I mean, you looked at LinkedIn, for example, a great resource for networking. And I know I've met so many people just on LinkedIn, and or just social media in general. And
Is that how we met? I believe that's how we met on LinkedIn.
yeah. So there you go, right? And then that's how we kept in touch, and then we finally met in person, in Texas for the conference. But that's what it comes down to, and that's why I know when and at the ASP conference, I had a few of my mentees there with me, and that's what I was telling them. Like, listen, yes, this is a great opportunity for you to gain some knowledge at these different talks, especially the talks with whether it's showing off research or the ones that had panels of professionals working in the field and getting their awesome insight and experience. But also, the other component to this is the networking side. There's so many people here that you just want to talk to, right? And just get to know them, and like, getting to know you has been a pleasure. And I love that we were able to, be able to meet and keep a a relationship. And but that's where it comes down to, and that's why any early practitioner was thinking about working in the field to some degree. And I think this applies to any industry for that matter. You have to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, because there's a lot of people who don't feel too comfortable in like a social setting, especially when it's like at a conference setting, right, where there's so many people, or like at a mixer, right? It can be so nerve-wracking for so many people to like go up and talk to someone. Hey, my name is so, like, hey, so what do you do, right? So I think like breaking out of that, right, whether it's networking with colleagues, talking to people, potential clients, or like talking to coaches, like we discussed, like, and showing them how what we do can definitely benefit their program. And so
Yeah.
breaking out of
Not
that.
to quote like a straight quote out of Ted Lasso, but it's about being curious, right? Like, it's about being curious about other people. So to me, networking, I love it because I don't consider it networking. I just consider it learning other people's stories. I'm genuinely curious about your experience and why you're doing what you're doing and how you go about what you're doing, because I know that your perspective was shaped on a whole life story that I know nothing about, and you're applying your perspective to your work, and it's creating a set of results. So I'm just interested, to see what's going on and why that's happening. And I think, for the listeners here, if you're talking about building a career in this field, understand the people that are in this field, right? This is a helping profession, right? This is once again, it's a relationship building profession. So if you network, if you go to conferences, if you go to clinics and all these things, and you have a support system, use the support system. You know, if there's someone in your network that's really great at confidence, instilling confidence and workshops on confidence, and you have an athlete who's struggling with confidence, reach out to the person in your network that might be able to provide you something helpful. You know, for me, I wasn't great with social media or technology. One of my best friends has that TikTok account. We met, he gave me great ideas. We talked about how to structure it. We talked about different, styles of videos that might impact or influence the most amount of people. And I used his help, in order to do that. And I support him in other ways. And, I think as you get older and as you kind of build a profession and build a personal life, having people in your corner that want the same things, that go about things in the same way with the same values and expectations that you do, but that have different skill sets, right? And can provide different things for you. That's how I intentionally build out my inner circle and a little bit more of my outer circle. I want people who don't just say yes to me. I want people with different, perspectives and points of views and different experiences so that I can apply it. And just like you're asking your players and your coaches to have an open mind on being coachable and learning new things, we have to always have an open mind to hearing criticism or feedback and to learning new ways of doing things. Otherwise, as you say, we get stagnant, we don't get better. And in this field, if you're stagnant and you're not getting better, you're actually doing a disservice to your clients who you care about.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. So, hey, I want to thank you for definitely coming on, man. You brought a lot of heat, a lot of good stuff, a lot of value. I'm sure whoever's listening to us, agrees with that. So if we had someone who was interested in following you or getting in contact with you, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so all my social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok is Zack Etter 16, ZACKETTER 16. Just shoot me a DM. I have a link tree on all of those. I have links to, the book that I wrote, my mental playbook, the coach's education course, a Calendly where you could book an appointment for a free consultation. But if you just want to ask any questions or just get in touch, shoot me a DM and let's just talk and, see how we can build our network together.
Awesome, man. Yeah, definitely follow him, and get in contact with him. He's a great man and, brings a lot of good stuff to those around him, everyone he touches. So, Zack, my friend, thank you so much for, again, taking the time to come on here today. And thank you for just sharing your awesome experience and perspectives, man.
All right. Thank you. Enjoy.
All right. Well, hey, thank you for watching this. If you like what you see, tell your friends, tell everyone around you to subscribe to the Dr. Coach Show. Thank you so much for watching and, enjoy the rest of your day, y'all. Take care.